Welcome to Natural Collisions, brought to you by Co.act Detroit. Conversations about the challenges and opportunities in the nonprofit sector, highlighting the voices in nonprofit work in Detroit and Southeast Michigan. I'm your host and program coordinator at Co.act Detroit, Charnay Sanders. Today's Natural Collision is between two intermediary nonprofit organizations. Intermediaries work as mediators, or in this case, work to support other nonprofits so they are able to advance their missions and better serve others. We are glad to have
Kelley Kuhn, Vice President of the Michigan Nonprofit Association. The Michigan Nonprofit Association is a statewide membership organization dedicated to serving the diverse nonprofit sector through advocacy, training, and resources.
And joining Kelley,
Matthew Schmitt. I am a program manager at Michigan Community Resources. Michigan Community Resources has been around for about 22 years. It started as a pro bono legal association for attorneys to offer services to nonprofits throughout the state. And we've grown since then. We still offer that, but we also offer technical assistance and expertise when it comes to managing nonprofits on a wide scale.
Both organizations are partners to Co.act Detroit. Michigan Community Resources and Michigan Nonprofit Association have currently been working together on Co.act Detroit's Activate Fund, which is a $1.5 million grant fund to support capacity building and collaboration of nonprofits in Southeast Michigan. Though Matthew and Kelley visited Co.act's physical space several times, they've become more active in conversation in the digital space.
Well, we've met, I think, but we've really gotten to know each other virtually through this sort of new normal that we're in. But yeah, we know each other. Yeah,
we're like best friends via Zoom. It's probably going to be weird, and it's going to be really weird and awkward when we see each other in person. But by Zoom, we are amazing.
I know Kelley is my best new Zoom friend. That's accurate.
Having two intermediary nonprofit organizations in the room, we wanted to go in depth on just what an intermediary is and what do they offer the nonprofit community in Detroit and Southeast Michigan.
Michigan Nonprofit Association, we define an intermediary organization as an organization that is likely a nonprofit themselves and provides a variety of services and resources and programs to other nonprofits. Most of the time, intermediary organizations are looking at building internal capacity or focused on the management of the nonprofit. So taking a look at how they might manage their board. So anything that might relate to board governance, something that might relate to fundraising or creating a revenue strategy. So something that really focuses on and thinks and really looks inward at how the organization operates and manages. Oftentimes an intermediary is not necessarily focused on the mission work.
Yeah, and this is Matthew. Yeah, that's a really great overview. In terms of where my role comes in, I work at Michigan Community Resources, and we have relationships with many of the local statewide foundations, like the Kresge Foundation, the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. And the way that my role works as a program manager is to kind of be a bridge between grassroots and on-the-ground nonprofits and the funders. There's a long-standing sort of feeling of disconnect, I would say, sort of between the work that's being done and the people that have the most financial resources to give. And what I try to do all the time is build up the sense that a nonprofit is doing the actual on-the-ground work, and they have the expertise in terms of how to do the work with their neighbors. They've been doing having all the conversations. And I remind nonprofit leaders that what they're actually doing is asking people like Kresge and Ralph C. Wilson to come along as co-investors. They have been investing in their community through time, through their own money, through all kinds of organizing activities. And they're asking people to come along as a co-investor in the finances. And so that's sort of a framework I like to apply and then build from there. Some of the funny things that happen is sometimes the grassroots leaders, the nonprofit leaders think that I personally represent Kresge or I personally represent Ralph C. Wilson. And one of the things that we do at MCR is also have sessions and meetings for people getting ready to apply to those kinds of things. And we have follow-up ones for people that applied, but also, didn't get the funds. And so we do sort of a follow-up to kind of think about how to strategize for the next round. And at least half of the time when we have those conversations, the nonprofit leader is like, Matthew, why didn't you give me the money? And I'm like, it wasn't me. This is not, I don't have the money. I'm here working as an intermediary between you and the foundation. And I get to see sort of the patterns of how they offer funds and what kinds of things they're really looking at and what kinds of strategies that I think you might want to apply for, use next time. But it's not me. And sometimes people are really mad and sad, and I have to sort of walk through that with them. It happens quite a bit, actually.
Matthew and Kelley continue discussing the collaboration happening between Intermediaries and Southeast Michigan.
I have often said this to staff at MCR, staff at Co.act, staff in other intermediary organizations, that I feel very much like an extension of their staffs, because I feel like we have worked so closely. I feel like the only thing that separates us is the logos that are on our paychecks, again, especially in this last year. So I'll just give a quick story. Not quite this time last year, but in another month or two, if you can go back to the beginning of COVID and not really understanding, all that was about to happen and take shape and, everything that happened, but thinking about it through how are we going to prepare nonprofits and just what does that mean? And so the first thing that we got out in front of at the Nonprofit Association was the Paycheck Protection Program. And this is timely because at this point in time, we're looking at a second round of those Paycheck Protection Program opportunities before us. And so we partnered with Co.act to actually put on a series of webinars and trainings to be able to help nonprofits understand how to access capital. Traditionally, nonprofits did not have access to capital in the way of the Paycheck Protection Program that was available for small businesses, but it was not available for nonprofit organizations. It just was an amazing way. And we've heard over and over stories from nonprofits all over Michigan in particular that have said that the Paycheck Protection Program was definitely a way that they were able to keep things moving in their organizations. And that in those first initial months of just understanding what COVID meant, right? Like, these were organizations who were operating out of facilities and offices, and people began to work virtually. So that was kind of the beginnings of partnerships in a way that I think have just intensified. Before we even logged on, we were talking about how Matthew and I are definitely BFFs through Zoom. Honestly, everything that we have been doing has been delivered virtually. So hot off of the Paycheck Protection Program, we partnered with the Michigan Community Resources to just make sure that we were monitoring policy changes. So the Michigan Community Resources does great work in providing support to nonprofits from a legal standpoint, but policy sometimes overlaps into that. So we immediately started partnering with the team over at MCR. And then from that sprung this whole opportunity to do a virtual series where we were reimagining the nonprofit workplace. So not only taking a look at what executive orders would mean for organizations to keep their people safe and continue to provide services, but what does it mean for you to be thinking about that through a diversity, inclusion, and equity lens? What does that mean if your nonprofit wasn't going to weather this as much and as well as you thought you would? What are opportunities for you to think about mergers, collaborations, all sorts of things? We know that the whole issue around racial equity has been just at the forefront with regard to COVID. So the series allowed us to really dig in to think about that and what that means for nonprofits. And while we all could have delivered that separately, may have even done it in the past, what we were able to do is bring a lot of our partners together to deliver one series and put all of our energies into it. And we were doing a webinar a week. And so we did a 10-part series over the summer. And I think that's just a great example of talking about how the relationship over time evolved into things. So I'll end there with my quick story.
Yeah, thank you, Kelley. It is. I barely knew Kelley before this. I knew of her, but we got to work with doing some assessments, some sort of self-evaluations that the M&A had developed this tool and all of the people all the grantees that came through the Activate Fund got to have this assessment to sort of see like the health of their nonprofit. And then Kelley and I got to be on 25 Zoom calls or around 25 Zoom calls together to kind of go over those findings. It was really amazing because, like she said, we sort of feel like extensions of each other's staff. I mean, I think about what life was like last year, and you would drive to work, you would go into an office space, and that is awesome. And we miss that on many levels, but it also takes time. And there's like sort of a creative spirit that a lot of nonprofits, intermediaries like us really approach this time with. I connect with Kelley on Zoom just as much as my actual coworkers in MCR. And so it does feel like some of these silos have been virtually eliminated in ways that just hadn't happened before. It was really incredible to see nonprofits that we work with on the ground, grassroots folks, immediately pivoting to work with other neighborhood nonprofits to meet the needs of their community, even if that wasn't specifically tied to their mission. They just knew they had to do it. We got to do that in other ways, in intermediary ways. There's an organization called Challenge Detroit that is comprised of young adults that come together for a fellowship year where they do a lot of supportive consulting work for different nonprofits. And we had something slated for April of 2020 that was meant for the Challenge Detroit Fellows to help MCR with a project. Well, that project was meant to be in person, and we were going to do a whole bunch of storytelling things. And we were really close to just scrapping it. But then it occurred to us as we were listening to the nonprofits that were scrambling to get water to people, scrambling to get food to older folks in their neighborhood. Could these nonprofits use the help of these young adults who are not able to go to work as they had been in their placement jobs, who are ready to help? They have all kinds of experience with marketing, with web design. What could we do right now? And I was really grateful that the Challenge Detroit leadership, Shelley Danner, they were like, let's just try. Let's see what we can do. And so what happened was we had 5 or 6 nonprofits that really felt like they could use some help. And we had these teams of like 5 to 6 fellows who just met with them. And so like, what could we help you with? And everything from creating a new portal online for how people could order food, and a phone tree system for people that weren't technically online. Detroit has 30 to 40% of people that are not technically online. And so they were creating ways to work around that. I mean, it was inspiring. That would have never happened if we didn't have a reason to have to pivot. So many issues with COVID, and I'm not trying to say like, hey, it was a great thing. But what was great is that we could see like the real backbone of nonprofits and people dedicated to helping their communities come up with new ways on the spot to meet those needs. And I don't know that we would have seen that any other way.
As the conversation goes on, Kelley and Matthew touch on the importance of intermediaries working in partnership through sharing resources opposed to duplicating efforts.
The thing that I mentioned with Challenge Detroit, alumni to alumni, was that we were trying to work on a storytelling sort of avenue for nonprofits, like a kind of a moth for nonprofits. As we started to explore that was going to be the original Challenge Detroit project. We realized that those exist in different pockets, and that is part of like what research and development is all about. But truthfully, nonprofit work is strained many times, and many nonprofits are aching for some sort of capacity building avenue, right? So like, we only had a grant writer, or if we only had someone to do our marketing instead of the executive director and a program manager staying up late at night making Facebook posts, right? Like, we don't have anyone who can take this on seriously. And so what that does is it creates those silos, like I mentioned before, that we've been able to see some perforation in this year, but it creates that kind of siloing. So yes, there is often overlap, and that can be confusing for a community. That can be confusing for nonprofit leaders. Like, where do we go first? And I think one of the things that, I know we're having a conversation about many things, but one of the dynamics that I know Co.act is working on, Ralph C. Wilson, is to kind of create networks of awareness around what is available, both in terms of what nonprofits are doing, what supportive service providers, business people that are willing to help with different kinds of projects for nonprofits, what they offer. I know there's a lot of effort to kind of bring that into an arena of we can see everyone that's at the table. And that has come from exactly what you're saying. There is overlap, there is replication.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been challenges for nonprofits to know where to go and how to access, resources, information, and things that they need. And I think historically you could certainly take a look at, whether or not there has been duplication of efforts. And even now some would argue that there still is duplication of efforts. We don't always see eye to eye on things, and that is okay. Because I think in the end, the nonprofits that we worked with in the case of the Activate Fund got perspectives from a variety of viewpoints and a variety of things. And then more importantly, not only got perspective, they could engage. I mean, I think when we debrief, sometimes I think our scheduled time with each other was like 2 hours. And it felt like with some of these organizations, we could just go on and he'd continue to talk. And in some cases they did. They called Matthew and they kept talking and they kept thinking about things. But I know I'm still getting emails from organizations that I did a technical assistance meeting with alongside with Matthew, who said they're still benefiting for some of the things that we were able to go through and some of the important things that we talked about. And again, that might be viewed as duplication, but it was like necessary to give the right supports and a lot of supports to the nonprofits when they needed it. Again, what is a moment in time has turned out to have a much deeper impact in how they're thinking about and doing their work. And I think building their capacity beyond even just the Activate Fund program to really just be thinking about, their nonprofit from a holistic viewpoint.
And, I think as you were talking, it reminded me, I led a nonprofit in Los Angeles for about 8 years. And part of that was partnering with a lot of organizations that were assisting people living homelessly. And one of those organizations realized that like Los Angeles, Hollywood is like the homeless capital of the nation. And there's just so many resources, but a lot of people were sort of competing to be the best place for people living homelessly to come and get services. And not necessarily in the best interest of those people, but so that they could compete for the greatest amount of funds. And that was just kind of chaotic, right? And if you were in need of some of those services, a lot of the people that I got to know personally, some people that I would call friends now, would talk about like, do you know how hard it is to get from one part of town to the other and realize that you left your social security card back at the friend's house you were crashing at last night, and they don't have access to that because you used it at this other organization yesterday. And so there was just this really like dense feeling of like just so many repeated kinds of meetings people had to have. And this one organization called People Assisting the Homeless had a vision to have like a central location where a whole bunch of different service providers could be. And it revolutionized the experience for people. They'd come in, there was everything from like a health clinic to a hair salon to a place where they could have a judge come in and look over any sort of legal issues that they might be having all in one spot. They could just show up there. And it reminds me a little bit of that. I think to last year, literally at this time, we tragically lost my mom. She had a stroke and a heart attack, and then she passed away. And while we were in the hospital, I remember being completely confounded by, the person that was sort of focusing on the brain side of things would come in and give us a report and assessment. And the person that was focusing on the blood side of things, her heart. And there seemed to be this like, are they talking to each other? Like, are they actually paying attention? And we did call for that as a family. We're like, can we actually all get in the same room and just sort of like, can I hear what you're thinking and make sure that doctor, she hears what you're thinking? And sadly, it didn't go the way we hoped for in the end, but it made me understand compassionately what it's like to try to be getting services that you need help with. But it's like you have to go through that process again and again and explain what your nonprofit's all about to this attorney, and explain what your nonprofit's all about to this marketer, and explain what you're all about to this. And that's a tiring, time-consuming process. So I think a direction that I'm seeing happen, and this year really brought that to the foreground, in, like I said, in ways that may not have been so expedient had we not been forced to do these kinds of meetings, was that you had multiple people at the table. And like Kelley said, Kelley brought a different perspective. Her colleague Sarah brought an interestingly different perspective. I brought something different. And yeah, we didn't always think each other's best ideas were the priority for that nonprofit, but it was great because it gave that nonprofit a menu of things to choose from and feel like everyone was hearing me talk about what our organization does. And I didn't have to go through it 3 or 4 times like I'm at like a networking convention where I just have to keep pumping that out. I got to sit at a place and everyone was at the table together. And I know that was appreciated. I heard that many times.
In 2019, Co.act Detroit introduced the Activate Fund, a $1.5 million grant fund to support capacity building and collaboration of nonprofits in Southeast Michigan. Co.act worked with various intermediary partners and cross-sector community leaders from around the region to serve as strategic partners, advisors, and external jurors to the fund. Both Michigan Community Resources and Michigan Nonprofit Association are intermediary partners. Kelley and Matthew discuss their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Activate Fund was an opportunity and is an opportunity. I say was because it has, it's actively going right now. The Activate Fund opportunity is, and it was piloted or launched just recently. So we're in our first round of the Activate Fund. But really what it was is a chance for nonprofits to apply and receive the opportunity to work in a cohort. So 25 nonprofits were selected in the first round with the Activate Fund. They wrote applications that focused on areas that they had assessed that they wanted to build their capacity in and could do in a particular time frame, but also could do it with a service provider or some service expertise. So kind of back to what Matthew was talking about and being able to say, I want to be able to explain what my organization needs, but I don't want to have to explain it to 3 different service providers. So the Activate Fund gave an opportunity, even just through the application process, for nonprofits to organize what were their highest needs in building their capacity. And then we built supports in through the fund around that. So the navigator, so having the ability to have somebody like Matthew be able to navigate them through the process, as well as navigate them through, issues or concerns that they might have. And then they were able to access the principles and practices assessment to really independently take a look at whether those areas would align with what their application submission was, whether or not other parts of the assessment would show other things that could have led to their areas of concern. And then the other thing is that the Activate Fund gave the opportunity to vet service providers. And so sometimes quite often what we hear from nonprofits is, I know what I need. I just don't know where to go get the resource to help me get what I need. So the beauty of the Activate Fund, I think another benefit is that they're able to access and work with service providers and service expertise in a particular area that the grantee has identified and through service providers that have been vetted. So I think it's just a really great opportunity to put a lot of supports to a nonprofit identifying what a need is.
To reaffirm what Kelley's saying, they typically know what they need, and they're open to hearing suggestions and sort of strategies from people like Kelley and myself. But you ask a nonprofit leader, what do they need most, first and foremost right now? They can tell you. They know what they want. They know what their community is asking for and which direction they want to go. And yes, sometimes they do appreciate an idea bouncing, like what do you think about that? Where do you think that should go? Oh, maybe we should hold off on that until we get a good web design, because if we have a good marketing plan, but the web isn't supporting that, it might not roll out as quickly. Great, that's helpful. But yeah, I would say, yes, it was good to have us all at the table. I think that this was a pilot year. I think that just frankly, many of the nonprofits have been super appreciative. They've also been worn out from some of it too, because we're learning as we go. And so we have this sense of we know where we want to go with that. We know how we want to do it in maybe future iterations.
Matthew, always a pleasure. Although I didn't see you this time. This is our first podcast together. What will be our next adventure?
I don't know, Kelley. But again, it's been great becoming your Zoom BFF of 2020. I do hope that 2021 gives us a chance to potentially meet in person. I mean, I don't want to put it out there and jinx it in any way, but maybe we could actually sit at a table together.
Agreed. I can't wait till we sit around that big table at Co.act again.
Thank you to Kelley Kuhn of Michigan Nonprofit Association. Find more information at mnaonline.org. And thank you to Matthew Schmitt of Michigan Community Resources. Be sure to visit at website mi-community.org. On Natural Collisions, Co.act Detroit loves to highlight nonprofits doing exciting work in the Detroit and Southeast Michigan area. This episode, we love to highlight the work of Willie Bell and the Family Assistance for Renaissance Men, also known as FARM.
Yes, my name is Willie Bell. I'm the CEO, Executive Director of the FARM organization. So FARM, Family Assistance for Renaissance Men, or I should put it, Family Assistance for the man that wants a renaissance in his life. And it's called Family Assistance first on purpose because it's not just about the father. Although we focus our attention and most of our attention on the father's renovation or father's, rehab, we do that so that the father is able to return back to his family with some tools and some more knowledge as to how to be a healthy, helpful part of the family, thereby being able to, contribute to raising his own children who in many cases are removed from him because he wasn't that healthy, helpful, component to the family. Here in the state of Michigan, if a man is behind in child support, it goes too long, it progresses to a felony non-support case. And then the first thing that happens, though, when it gets behind is that courts put a warrant out for his arrest. The next step is they take their driver's license privileges from them. And it's almost impossible for the man to recover from something like that, even when he's finally coming to his right senses. So, what we do is we mentor him those tools that he needs to understand, first, second, and third, on how to be a father, why it's important for him to make himself whole and to find a way to be able to contribute to supporting his children and what happens when he's not there. But the Co.act Fund, I'm not sure exactly how it came about, but when it did, it was a good fit for us to be able to, do some of the things that's going to help us, that's helping us, I should say, to further our mission, particularly in the areas of IT, office work, office supplies, equipment, things like that. So we're one of those organizations that's right here on the cusp of scaling, but we needed some tools and we needed some more infrastructure type of pieces to add. And the Co.act Fund came right along and helped us with a lot of those pieces. So we're very excited that we're able to be a partner with the Co.act Fund. If someone is interested in joining the program or interested in the resources that we provide in the program, all they have to do is go online to farm-mi.org. That's FARM-MI.org. And they'll go to the application process. And once they fill out the application, it'll hit our system. And then we'll be able to respond back to them, letting them know, what their next steps are. Because we don't just take anybody off the streets that just want us to help them get their driver's licenses back or help them get on track with their child support. We help the ones that are sincere about their rehab or becoming Renaissance men, having to, realizing the Renaissance in their lives for the sake of their children, not just for themselves. And so that's how we're able to have a 90% overall program success rate, is because we interview first. One of the reasons I started the program, because I'm the founder and the CEO of the FARM organization, is that I founded this organization because I heard the man upstairs tell me that now that he's blessed me and showed me some principles on how to be a better father, how to be a better man, now he wants me to write a program to help other men out there receive the same blessings that he bestowed upon me. And so once I did that, I looked back on my life, because I was one of those men that didn't have a father in my life as a child. My father lived in Detroit, but he never visited me once. And so because of that, there was a void in my life, and I went wayward and just tried to figure things out. And of course, if a man doesn't have a guide in his life, someone teaching him some financial literacy, someone teaching him respect and direction, what ends up happening is that he ends up trying to figure it out on his own, and the streets grab a hold of him. And for many men out there, it's a point of no return. You know, they get out there and the streets feel good to them and looks good to them. And of course, that's all they know. It's almost like Tarzan trying to figure it out. And if there's nobody out there teaching you the right way to go, you're going to continue going the wrong way the rest of your life.
Thank you to Willie Bell of Farm. Find out more at farm-mi.org. This has been Natural Collisions Podcast from Co.act Detroit. Remember, the word co-act itself means to work together because we know we cannot have transformational impact if we only work alone. To learn more about Co.act Detroit and upcoming initiatives, visit coactdetroit.org. Please subscribe to Natural Collisions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will return with more conversations soon. Thank you for listening.